So thanks everybody for taking some time out of your day today. This is a second coffee connection we've had this year. We've got a couple more lined up for November, December before we go. But this is a very important topic we're talking about today. You're probably getting tired of me talking about how this board thinks if we keep the membership informed, our job gets easier, but it really is the case. We've always talked kind of what's going on inside the gates, inside the fence line. We're going to change that up a little bit and start talking a little bit more about what's going on Hilton Head Island and how it impacts us. And one subject that I'm sure you've all heard tons about is employee housing. It's definitely affecting us already. It affected us last year when we were having to do more in the compensation and to keep workers available for us. It's going to just keep getting harder and harder for us as Bluffton grows and as the areas west of Bluffton grow. There's just, the competition for labor gets tougher, and our access to labor being at the kind of the end of the road is tough. The lucky thing we've got is one of our own members, Dave Wetmore's, joined a group that's taking the bull by the horns, so to speak, and have a plan going forward. And Dave's going to get us up to speed today on what the plans are and where they stand and that type of thing. We'll open it up for questions for everybody when Dave's done. And after Dave's done, if you've got any questions about what's going on in the club or anything, Mario and I are here to help out with that as well. So I'm going to turn it over to David. Please give him your attention, and thanks again for coming today.
Thank you, Ray. When it first came out that there was going to be a coffee with Dave, and we was going to talk about housing, I'm sure mostly my friends were saying, what the heck does Dave Wetmore know about housing? And I'm sure somebody said, well, I think he owns a house. But then people that know me well know that Patty owns the house. And Patty pays all the bills. So you may think that I'm not very well versed in housing issues, but let me tell you how I started down this road. About a year ago, our own Sandy West held a forum where they invited community leaders to talk about the housing problem. Now, I am sure the Wetmores were invited because Patty was the chairman of the Long Cove Fund for a couple of years, and I was along as their sidekick. And so Sandy had this meeting, and I was taken aback by the issue that we just simply don't have enough places for our workers to live. So I'm going to try and take you down a road in 30 minutes to an hour that took me a year. And I'm not going to talk fast. So this is the mission. I want you to understand at the end of the day that affordable housing is a significant issue for the island, and that we have to do something about it, or that it could affect both our lifestyle and our property values. Both things you should care about. I'd also want you to know that we have come up with a solution that is both doable, it's practical, it can be done now, and it doesn't involve any development. We don't have to build anything. Pretty important to the island. I don't know anybody that wants to see more traffic, more visitors, whatever. The best part about all this is that you can be part of the solution. If there are community problems, many times it's very hard for an individual citizen to get involved. It's just difficult. You can be part of this. And I think at the end of the day, hopefully you're going to understand why. So here's the rules. You can stop me at any time. I'll be happy to answer any question that you have. If I don't have the answer, I'll get it to you. I'd prefer that we hold the questions until the end. And then you would come up and identify yourself, because this is being videoed. It will be available. There are a lot of people that aren't here today. But if something comes up and you feel like you have to raise a question, I'll stop and answer the question, okay? So why do we have this problem in the first place? We live in a great place, right? Everybody loves it here. So 6 consecutive years, we're the #1 island in the United States. There's not one of us. We've had the good fortune of traveling all over the world. When I come over that bridge, it feels good. When I pull into Long Cove, it feels even better. Property values. What's happened? I mean, a couple of years ago, you could buy a reasonably nice house in Long Cove for $500,000, right? What do you do when they go on the market for $1.2 million today? They're gone in a day. And most of them need a lot of work. So the property values have gone up significantly. It's even worse when you look at the condos and villas. Now, we've been at this for a while. I'm going to talk to you about the organization I'm involved with, but we've been looking at homes and villas. And are you familiar with Cordilla Parkway? There's a bunch of villas over on the left-hand side. So we're looking at some units, and over the last 5 years, they've increased 352%. And so what happens when an investor buys a condo or a villa and pays 350% more than they cost 5 years ago? Rents go up. The only way an investor can make a return is to charge the rents, and that's why they've gone up so much. There's clouds on the horizon. We got trouble coming. Randy Brooks did my presentation. I can't do any of this stuff anymore. Rents have more than doubled. So the first unit, we have 3 units we bought already. They're occupied by workers. 2 years ago, this individual was paying $800 a month for his unit. A year ago, it was $1,200. This year, before we bought the unit, it was $1,800. Workers simply can't afford to do that. It's impossible. They just don't make enough money to be able to handle that. In fact, every time before I make a presentation, and I do this a lot, you can't tell I like to get up and talk. It's hard to find listeners. So every morning when I'm going to make a presentation, I go and look at the apartments.com, and you can put in what's it cost to rent a 1-bedroom apartment in Hilton Head. In the average 1-bedroom apartment, I got to check my notes because I don't want to give you bad data. But as of this morning, the average 1-bedroom is about $2,000 a month. The average 2-bedroom is about $2,400 a month. I mean, those are big numbers. I mean, and the average worker can't afford to pay for that. The problem is the area median income has not gone up at the rate that the rental costs have gone up. So AMI, area median income, it's the number where half of the town makes more than that and half of the town makes less than that. It's just simple median. And it's only gone up about 10%. And so if the rents are doubling or tripling and your income's only going up 10%, you got a problem. So what happens? People move off the island. I mean, I had a meeting this morning with a town councilman at Nectar, and we were meeting with an attorney, and the attorney didn't understand that it was Nectar Hilton Head instead of Nectar Bluffton. And they called, and I said, you don't need to worry about showing up. I mean, you're not going to get there in time for, it'll take over an hour to get there. We never go off the island in the morning anymore and try and come back. It's impossible. So what's going to happen? People are going to take jobs in areas outside of Hilton Head. I mean, nobody wants to do that. That's what you do in Chicago and New York, and it's what most of us did our whole careers. We spent half an hour commuting, just a total waste of time. It also is expensive. I mean, gas is expensive. This is an issue that's come up. I think the communities now recognize that workforce housing is an issue. And in a recent survey, it's now up. Housing is a big issue. People can't hire. I mean, if you talk to people that run businesses or that they just can't find enough workers. And it comes home to rest. I think Bob Patton had the opportunity they were looking for an additional golf professional. And they had identified a very good candidate. And the woman, it was a female, and she said, well, I can't find any suitable housing on this island. I can't afford it at the compensation that we're talking about. The Hilton Head Hospital was trying to hire an x-ray technician. So this is an x-ray technician making $90,000 a year, working at St. Joseph Candler in Savannah. And They were going to offer her, a raise, a 10% raise, get her to $100,000. She had 2 children, a single woman with 2 children, couldn't find a place to live on Hilton Head. She kept her job. And so I don't know if you know, but if you go to the Hilton Head Hospital, sometimes they have a room, but they'll tell you that they can't occupy it because they don't have anybody to take care of you. Or if you go there, our pharmacies are only open a certain amount of time every day, and they close on the weekends. So if you need something, you can't get it. You walk into some restaurants, and there are restaurants with portions of the restaurant that aren't open anymore because they can't get anybody to serve you. So it's affecting the quality of life. It may get worse. There are more housing permits in Jasper County right now than there are in Beaufort County. That's a pretty staggering thing. Now, if they put that terminal in and there's all that development out there, where are people going to live? They're going to live close to where they work. So in another survey, it's beginning to hit home. So people are recognizing the pain that it occurs associated with the shortage of workers. You can see that about 50% of the people are somewhat annoyed. Something happens. I was talking to somebody, and I can't remember. I talk about workforce housing every time I meet with somebody now. And so our social obligations have totally dried up. No one wants to listen to Wetmore. So 50% of the people are noticing this, and 9%, 10% of our population is upset. It's affecting their quality of life. It also has a potential effect on vacationers. So just a show of hands, how many people vacationed here before you bought? Virtually all of us, right? Although we dislike sometimes the idea that, traffic can be really hard, you can't turn left out of Long Cove at certain times of the year, right? Unless you're very patient. I don't fall in that category. I turn right and go around. Somehow it's better for me to be moving than sitting. Okay? So, although they're an issue, they are also the goose that laid the golden egg. Virtually all of our home sales come from somebody that vacationed here. And so if the vacationers are beginning to experience a downturn, this is a survey. This is in 2021. And we don't have the data in 2023 yet, but there's a downturn in the way that people view their vacation experience in Hilton Head. And what's that going to do? If this continues to go down, it's going to have a very negative effect on our property values. We need to have people visiting Hilton Head in order to serve as the buyers as our properties come up. There's a lot of people in this room that are probably going to be selling their house in the next 10 or 15 years. We need those buyers, or we're going to suffer. So what can we do about it? I mean, this is identified, I think, by the town of Hilton Head maybe 8 or 10 years ago as a number one issue that had to be addressed. Not a heck of a lot's been done. So a group of community-minded individuals led by Alan Wolf, who is the CEO of the Surge Group. So the Surge Group is the largest single employer on Hilton Head Island. And they employ almost 1,400 people. And they identified this as a major issue almost 8 or 9 years ago and said, we have to do something. We got to keep these restaurants open. They, are, by the way, are very, very successful. And all the restaurants are owned by a series of partnerships. And so they're all owned by different, but it's amazing how successful they are. But they were experiencing a very significant problem. And Alan got interested, and he started working with the town, and they formed a coalition, and they started to come up with some solutions, and then COVID hit, and everything died. And so Alan was sitting with his wife one day, and she said, "You realize our 6 children are not going to be able to live here. They can't live here. There's no way." And it hit Alan, who has these 6 kids, and he said, "You know what? I got to do something about this." And so he started working, and he started looking at solutions around the country. Now, this is a problem that isn't only in Hilton Head. This is a problem in virtually every resort in the country and every ski area. And so he started doing the research. How have people addressed this thing? And he found out that the most successful partnerships usually involve a public-private partnership. So it's very difficult to develop workforce housing. We never call it low-income housing. It's workforce housing. It's very difficult to develop it without tax credits because you can't charge enough rent in the resort areas in order to earn a decent return on your money. And so in a capitalistic society, if you can't earn a decent returns, there's got to be somewhere where you make that difference up. And so we formed an organization called Coastal Community Development Corporation. And we populated the board with some really talented individuals. You may disagree, but Alan Wolf is the chair. I'm the vice chair. I know nothing about real estate. I don't even own a home. The cool thing about this is that Long Cove is always at the forefront of addressing community problems. It's been that way since I've been here, and we've been members since 1981. Somebody from Long Cove is always involved. We wouldn't have First Tee without Jim Magruder. No way. Ken Campbell was a member for probably 35 years. He is now no longer a member because he's in his 80s and he doesn't play golf as much anymore. So there are 3 people, and Tony, who's an expert on affordable housing, is also on the board. So there you have, out of 6 people, 3 of them are from Long Cove. In this organization, we're trying to do something. I told you that the town had identified the need for additional housing. There's supposed to be additional 1,700 units across the town. 1,000, that was until 2022. There was an additional 1,000 that were required by 2027. How many do you think have been delivered to the community? Anybody hazard a guess? 0. You win something, I don't know what. So the town, which identified this as a significant problem, has done nothing to date. They did, however, allocate a certain portion of funds that they're dedicated to solving the housing issue. I think it's $3 million this year. Beaufort County also has identified this as a significant issue, and we are also talking to them. So what are we going to do? How are we going to address this? Well, the first thing we do is formed a 501c3 organization. A 501c is a not-for-profit charitable organization. And you have to apply for it, and we have our 501c3 status. The second thing is we got to raise funds. Now, I'm not talking to you here just because I love to talk. We need to raise money. And the only way we're going to solve this problem is to raise money. If we don't, then the problem is just going to continue to grow. I mean, we are now talking to a group that has 47 condos available in Hilton Head Island. They're spread all over the island. And they're a group of doctors in Atlanta and New York, and they are going to put these units on the market. And some of those units have a basis of $10,000. And those units have a market value of about $220,000. So think of yourself as an investor that you buy a $10,000 unit, you put $2,000 down, and 15 years later you get $220,000. So you get over 100 times your money. Oh my God, why did I miss that? It's amazing. But what's happened is these units, with COVID and everything, all of a sudden Hilton Head became more of a year-round destination, and people began to work remotely, and so they needed places to stay. It also, Vrbo and Airbnb came into being, and so a unit that used to be able to rent for $800 a month would rent for $800 a week. You guys know where the Oaks is? The Oak community, so it's out next to the Turtle Place Mall. There are 8 Airbnb and Vrbo units in the Oaks. So can you imagine coming to Hilton Head and checking into your Oaks apartment for your Hilton Head vacation? Oh my God. It's horrible. How are they going to feel about Hilton Head? They're not going to think, I can't imagine. I haven't been in the units. I can't imagine they're very good. I mean, the Oaks has had a lot of problems anyway. They've had, drug problems and other problems. They may have cleaned that up. I think there are 24 units in Cordilla that are used Airbnb and Vrbo. And so as these units, they can just generate a significantly higher return because they're rented on a weekly basis. And when the investors come in and buy the units that are on the market, it goes up. After we raise the money, we're going to acquire property. We identify renters that meet our qualifications. It's all based on AMI. I don't want to get into the details of how HUD regulates all this, but if we follow the rules, we can save money. And we're going to operate efficiently. And I'm going to talk to you about each one of these things. So not-for-profit, 501c3 is we are not capitalistic. We are not trying to earn a return for our investors. In fact, there are no investors. We're not going to have people with equity in the corporation. The not-for-profit will own everything. And so we don't have to earn a return. So the only way you can make this thing work is to bend the cost curve. If you were to invest in workforce housing as an individual or a corporation, you probably want to earn somewhere between 15 and 20% return. That's because of the risk involved. We don't have to earn any return. It's important. So we have to bend the cost curve every chance we get. It's also there's a safe harbor rule that allows you, if you meet certain qualifications, you pay no property tax. And so if we offer properties at a certain rent, then we pay no property taxes. That's also a significant break. Raise money. So we're doing all this with volunteer labor. And although it's cut into my golf game significantly, probably made me better. But when you're doing things with volunteers, sometimes, if they're gone or they have a problem or what, stuff doesn't get done. And so you have to have some kind of organization. And we have started out CCDC with initial funding we got a grant from the Community Foundation of the Low Country. We've matched it with another $125,000. So our first employee starts today. So we have a program manager who's a member of the Gullah Geechee community who starts, a native islander. She understands these problems intimately, and now we're going to have somebody that works full time to try and help solve these problems. But we've already got the money. This is a cool thing. One of the ways you can help, most of us are at the age where we have to do what's called an RMD, the required minimum distribution from our 401k programs. And so I can tell you that I allocated a significant portion of my RMD towards the operating funds just because I think this is the biggest problem we have on the island. You may or may not disagree, but that's what Patty and I did personally. And if you give your RMD to a charity, to a 501c3, you pay no tax. And so it actually multiplies the effect of your contribution. I've pledged to raise $1 million in Long Cove. And I'm significantly on the way there, but I can tell you that we need more participation. And you go through this whole thing, and I'm not going to tell you it's a good investment. If you looked at all the classics, this wouldn't qualify as a good investment. However, if you look at the overall impact that you can have by making the investment, it probably is a good investment. It may protect your property values. It may protect your way of life. And we've got models that demonstrate we have sufficient cash flow to pay the return that we're stating. The return is nothing to write home about in these interest rate environments. So notes are available. We actually have changed this. So you have to be an accredited investor. That means you have to have income of $200,000 in each of the last 2 years, or your net worth has to be $1 million without your house. So the only people who can invest in this have to be accredited investors, which means we're also going to have a private placement memorandum. So you're going to get this document that says, this investment may be totally worthless. You may never get a nickel of interest. The weather may wipe out all of these properties. Every bad thing you could ever think of is going to be in this document, and you're going to have to sign it that says, I am in full control of my faculties. Some people might argue with this. And I'm willing to take this risk. So, you know, if you've done private placements, you know, you've seen this kind of stuff before. You have to have all this protection. I don't want any of you ever coming after me and suing me. I hate being sued. So we're going to pay a 3% return annually. We also originally went down the road of promising additional 2% if appreciation was above a certain amount. And we will honor that to anybody that's made a commitment, but we decided to take that away and give that appreciation to renters who can buy the properties. We want to encourage home ownership. And it's very important to have people put a stake and encourage home ownership. So that's not going to be available after we thought it might be attractive, but you know, the difference between if you invest $100,000 and you get $3,000 or $5,000, after taxes, it really doesn't amount to much. You can go out to dinner. I went out to dinner with Jeff on Saturday night, and it's, you know, you can't go out to dinner. It's $200 now. That's just what it costs. Okay, so we're going to buy existing properties. The cool thing about this is, pardon? It was wine. It was that killed him. So, you know, we're going to buy existing properties. Right now, we're targeting properties in the $200,000 to $300,000. So these are existing condos and villas. And so there were 600 transactions of this kind last year. We're starting out with a model. I'll talk to you about a couple models, but you know, we're not going to move the market significantly. There's a lot of activity in this market. When you talk about the kind of profits that have been experienced over the last couple of years, you understand why there's activity in that. I mean, it's pretty significant. We're only going to buy units that either meet our qualifications in terms of how up to date they are, or where the buyer is willing to reduce the purchase price to allow us to do the renovations so that they meet our qualifications. So we can't make this thing work if we're buying expensive properties. We just can't charge the rents, and we won't have our non-taxable status. You know, the funny is there's a lot of controversy over workforce housing. Sometimes when they call it low-income housing, it immediately raises people, I don't want that near me. No way. We want to have that in Long Cove. But the fact is, these are people that teach your kids. I know a lot of people here that have their kids live here and their grandkids live here, and you need teachers. So if you're a teacher making $50,000 and a one-bedroom apartment costs $2,200, you can't make it work. It doesn't work. Or nurses, or x-ray technicians, or the people that trim your dog, or the people that clean your pool, or the people that clean any of the services around here. People just can't live. And so it actually is a lot of different. So we have a qualification. We're gonna select people. The priority is applicants who meet the income guidelines, who want to work and live on the island. So they got to work on the island. We want people to live close to where they work. Employers or communities that support the program are going to get some priorities. So we came up with this approach. If we were able to raise $1 million in Long Cove from Long Cove members, then that would give us the ability to buy approximately 14 properties. And 7 of those properties would be allocated for Long Cove use. Now, what does that mean in reality? And so what that means is every time that one of those units comes up to rent, then Mario would get a notice that says you have X number of days to fill this unit. And he would have, so maybe a 2-bedroom, might be a 3-bedroom. And if he could fill it, he would use that. If it wasn't filled, he would keep that, Long Cove would keep that right until it was used. Now, in reality, is that worth very much? I don't really know. What's going to happen likely is the first 3 units we bought, we saved 8 workers. There were 4 units in 2 bedrooms. There were 2 workers to a bedroom. And then we just filled a 1-bedroom unit with 1 person who was living in Bluffton. So this person was living in the lofts. Are you guys familiar? If beyond where McDonald's was, there was one of those extended stay hotels where you got a hotel room and a little kitchen with a microwave. She was paying about $2,000 a month and then commuting to the island. She was a young paralegal. And there's actually a video if you go to our website. She talks about it. But her parents were going to tell her, you're going back to Greenville. We're not going to let you live in these conditions anymore. And now she has a nice Marshside unit, which is up off Gumtree Road. It's a really nice unit. It's completely redone, all new stuff. And she's paying $1,600 a month. And she can, she's got neighbors. She can be part of the community now. It's a cool story. Go to our website and watch it. You'll be investing. So bending the cost curve is pretty important. And I told you we got to do everything we can to do this because it's the only way to keep the rents low. There's no income tax. We could have either full relief from property taxes or partial relief. It depends on what units we have and what the rents are. And without getting into the details, you have to meet these requirements in order to maintain your status. But we won't necessarily do that if it makes sense to go outside those parameters. On Hilton Head, we may have to go up to 150% of AMI. AMI, the area median income for a property of 4 is now $111,000. So it's not defined as, it's defined by household, not by family. So a household could be 4 workers that are working at a restaurant. And if they make $111,000, they're at 100% of AMI. If they're making $160,000, they're at 150% of AMI. Everybody that we are dealing with, we've asked them to put skin in the game. And so we can't solve this problem all by ourselves. And so the property managers charge 12%. If you were to buy a unit on Hilton Head and go to a property manager and say, what are you going to charge me? It's 12% of gross rent. That's what they charge. We have a commitment from a property manager, one that will do it at 10. We now have a commitment from a property manager who will do it 8% in the first year, 9% in the second year. And so, those things add up. We don't pay full commission on real estate sales. So when we buy or sell, we haven't sold anything yet, but when we buy, we get a commission, we get a reduced rate from the people that we did, and we'll only do business with somebody that gives us a reduced rate. To date, we have pro bono legal services. The only problem with pro bono legal services is they're pro bono. I'm sure we have some lawyers in the audience, and it's great to get those services, but sometimes you need legal advice right now. Sometimes it's not as easy to get when you're on a pro bono basis. And everybody we do business with, we're going to ask them to give us some concessions. And so if we have repairs and maintenance, we're going to ask the people that do those services to give us a break. We've already got an accounting firm that's going to give us a break because of that. So we're asking everybody to pitch in and try and solve this problem. If you don't, we'll try and find somebody that will. So originally we were going to, I told you we were going to share potential appreciation. So does anybody know what the average rate of appreciation in Hilton Head property, Beaufort County property has been over the last 20 years? Any ideas? Lee? Sandy, you ought to know. No, the average appreciation in Beaufort County property over the last 20 years is 4.17% per year. Now, what's it been over the last 5 years? Rich, any idea?
11%.
close to 20. Over the last 10 years, over 10. But what happened in 2008, 2009, 2010, we had a significant downturn. And property cycles are cyclical. I mean, that's why they call them cycles. You know, things go up and down. So we were going to share, so the model was all based on increasing rents at 4% a year. So if you are in one of our units and we can start you off at a below market rate today, we will only increase those rates 4% per year. So for somebody that looked at it $800 to $1,200 to $1,800, and they said, oh, we're going to go from $800 to $832, oh, baby, that sounds pretty good, doesn't it? So, and it's all part of our model. We can do it. We can make the numbers work because we're bending these cost curves. So that appreciation will now go to helping our renters buy. We are going to have we're going to have a program where, think of it as a phantom. You know what phantom stock plans are? So basically, we'll give you phantom equity in your property. Just say, for example, 10% of your rent each year goes into a bank, you know, an intellectual bank, and that money can be used to purchase property. They have to buy one of our properties. It doesn't have to be the property they're in. It could be any property that we own at that time. And so they would have the ability to buy that property. Now, how can we do that? Well, our model is based on only increasing the appreciation at 4% over the 10-year period of the note. If the appreciation is higher than that, and who knows, it could be, it may not be, we could sell that property at 4% at a significantly reduced rate. If they go up 10%, we can sell it to them for exactly what we have it in the model. And so they can use their equity to purchase those properties. So this is the key thing. So when they studied this whole thing, there were a lot of communities that came up with an answer. Aspen, Colorado identified this 25 years ago as a significant problem. You know what the property values in Aspen. I mean, they're ridiculous. I mean, 25 million gets you a walk up, I guess. But what they did was they started a program like this and they put in a 15-year covenant. What happened at the end of 15 years? Yeah, the persons that held that thing sold it out and made millions of dollars. What are we doing? We're going to put a 99-year covenant. 99 years. That's going to cover my time period. And so what happens is that this unit can only be sold to somebody that meets the area median income guidelines over that entire 99 years. Now, will that suppress the market value of that property a little bit? Sure it will. But it's going to maintain that it goes to workforce housing for as long as we can. You can only go 99 years in South Carolina. But that should take care of the problem for a while. This is this is dramatic. I know. Our lifestyle is hanging in the balance. I believe this. I'm passionate about this. I can't tell you how much time I've spent on this. We are on our 19th model on trying to figure out how to make this work financially. I have involved all kinds of people from Long Cove. I ran this idea by Steve Schuckenbrock when we first came up with the idea. Steve, does this thing make any sense whatsoever? Could you point some holes in this thing? Jed Stafford, that just left, ran a mortgage company. He knows more about financing than I could ever even think about it. And Jed's helping us negotiate the mortgage properties. Jim Harding has been running all the models. I don't want to learn how to use Excel at this advanced age. By the time I got to the point where Excel was in use, I had people that could do it. So there's a lot of people involved in this. Long Cove has always supported doing community things. I kicked that off with that. You can help. So I'm never going to tell you this is a great investment. You're never going to hear that. I think it's a good thing. I was always raised with that idea. You do the right thing, this is it. We'll take tax-deductible donations. If you want to give money to the 501c3, if you want to use your RMD to help fund operations, God, we'd love that. But the only way we can really make a difference is to start buying existing properties. It's the only way we're going to solve the problem. If you invest in these notes payable, we're going to pay you a 3% return. We have we'll go through the models. I mean, I got one here. You won't be able to see it, but I can walk you through it. I just think this makes a lot of sense. So I spent 20 years of my life as the chairman of the board of a very large mutual fund company. They had $100 billion under management. We had about 130 mutual funds. So I have sat through so many investment presentations that I could probably do them backwards. And you may not even understand them. But there's modern portfolio theory that says you should allocate maybe somewhere between 2 and 5% of your investment portfolio to speculative investments in order to be out on the efficient frontier. So increase your return by taking some risk. Instead of taking risk with that 2 or 3% of your portfolio, then investing in something that may help the community, it makes a whole lot more sense to me, particularly at the age. I mean, whether we generate another 2 or 3% of return on our investments means nothing to it just isn't going to make a difference. And it gets taxed and all that. Now, you may have an issue and say, well, what's this going to do to my kids? I want to get as much money to my kids as I possibly can when I die. Well, we've actually talked to our children, and they support this. I mean, we're not talking about, it's not going to change things when you inherit money now. Oh, that violates the rules. So I think this makes a heck of a lot of sense. And I hope that you decide to support it. So we've been talking to everybody we can talk to try and get money to fund this. The town of Hilton Head has already indicated that they're going to spend $3 million. So we presented them with a proposal to put up $600,000. We would raise $600,000. We'd match that money, and we could buy 13 units. We've already been through our first and second readings. And so I don't know if you've ever been to a town council meeting. I can tell you, don't go. Oh my God. And anyway, so if you look at all this, basically we can make cash flow that allows us to pay the loan. So we're going to mortgage properties at 60% of the loan to value. The bank's not taking a lot of risk on this. And we're going to have to raise 40% of the money in terms of these notes payable. We can cash flow positive at the end of the period. That's where the money comes from, town of Hilton Head investors. As we pay down, so the loans are all based on a 30-year term with a 10-year balloon. And that means it's got to be refinanced sometime during that 10 years. And so because we're paying down the loan during that 10-year period, we're accumulating cash and we're getting appreciation, we can pay off the notes at the end of 10 years. And you can see that one has the appreciation out, but basically we'd end up having to borrow approximately $100,000 more than we originally started, and we paid off the $600,000 to the investors. And we've got models. So we are looking at a 47 unit. We're looking at trying to buy those 47 units. I don't know whether we'll be able to do it. Because we're all volunteers, and it takes a huge amount of time to look at 47 properties, figure out whether they meet our qualifications or not. But if those 47 properties go on the market, it is not going to be good for us, because those 47 units, all of those are occupied by workers today, and all of them had below market rents. And what's the first thing that's going to happen when an investor buys them, David? Raise the rents. So these Cordilla units are at $1,400. If you go on today and go to Cordillo and say, I want a 2-bedroom apartment, what do you think it costs? $2,200. What's going to happen to those families? They're gone. Chuck told me he drives by there when he's coming to Long Cove all the time, and he says he sees 30, 40, 50 kids getting on the bus. I mean, it's going to be bad. So we're trying to do that. We're working with the county of Beaufort. We're trying to get money from Beaufort. They've recognized this as a thing. We ultimately will be a developer. We will be able to develop, once we get some capital, we'll be able, like Kim Likens is on our board. Kim deals with this every day. Her customer base are the kids of the families that are doing the work for us. And she has stories that'll turn your hair. So she had one of her mothers came in, and she has 4 kids, and she's living in a 1-bedroom apartment at Aquaterra. Now, I don't know if you guys know what Aquaterra, but there's only two rental properties on the entire island of Hilton Head. One is Water Walk, which is Long Cove North. I think we have 21 members from there. And Aquaterra is the one that used to be on Hilton Head, whatever the school was. I can't remember. It's a Hilton Head Christian Academy. So that's the only 2 rental that are owned by, the same owner, managed. And so it's just an interesting situation. So I'm done. So all I'm asking you is, one, I hope you recognize there's a problem. I hope that you do recognize there's a problem. 2, we have one way to address it. I'm not saying this is the only way to do it. I think if you read in the paper, now North Point, it looks like it's moving forward. The town's putting a lot of money in that. I mean, that's a couple $1 million. They also bought some land out near Spanish Wells where the mobile homes, there's a mobile home development. This is not the entire answer, but it's something that we can do today. It's simple. All we got to do is go out and raise the money. Not easy. The cool thing about this is it's really an investment. I can tell you that I was involved in trying to raise money for the Boys and Girls Club expansion. I worked with Jim on the first tee. I can tell you raising $25,000 from a single family is brutally difficult. To get $25,000 as a contribution, it's so hard to do. There's just not that many people that are willing to commit that kind of thing. This, you're getting your money back. Your kids will get your money back. It's not likely that, I'm sorry about that. I'm 75 years old. It's likely in 10 years, my kids will be dealing with the issue. They're willing to deal with it. You can do it in a self-directed IRA. Now, if you are a younger person, if you're under 65, it might make sense to do this in a self-directed IRA. It might make a lot of sense. We can turn your investment into a contribution if you want to. So if you would be interested in dealing with, contributing whatever the number is, we start at $20,000. Through the Community Foundation of the Low Country, we can actually turn that into investment so that after 10 years, that money would be in an endowment that would be used only for the purposes that you specified. And so all this stuff has a fee. Self-directed IRA has there's fees for everything. I wish I could self-direct an IRA, but I can't. So that's it. It makes total sense to me. We got to solve this problem. And if we don't solve it, it's going to cost us. I guarantee it's going to cost us. And this seems like a simple insurance policy against doing that. And, I started with, how many people live on the island, Mario, that work at Long Cove? Not many. A handful of people. So we went to Palmetto Dunes. There's a very interesting person at Palmetto Dunes. We met with them. Originally, my idea was to get Long Cove locked up, raise the money, and go to Wexford. Because when Long Cove does something, Wexford's going to beat it. And I thought that was a great strategy. But somebody came to us in the meantime and said, Palmetto Dunes, very interested in this thing. We met with the people that run Palmetto Dunes. 87% of their employees live off island. He said they're losing people all the time. When I come to the club now, I always ask, tell me where you live, tell me how long it takes you to commute. 10 years ago when we reopened the clubhouse, I was spending so much time here that I became personally familiar with everybody. I was here all the time. And I knew everybody. And, you would walk into the club 10 years ago, and virtually everybody knew who you were. They put whatever drink you drank that, was sitting on your table when you came in. It was a very comfortable. The last 2 or 3 years, we have tremendous turnover. It's a fact of life. And so it's not quite as comfortable as it used to be. I mean, it was really great to walk in here. It's, Cynthia will be gone pretty soon. Cynthia is, I think she's my age. Probably younger. No, she has no way she's that old. So it just changes the way that you enjoy this club. And so it's another way of helping to solve the problem. So I'm going to stop talking. If you have a question, please come up, identify yourself, because this is being taped. If I can't give you an answer, I promise you I'll get back to you an answer. There is absolutely no attempt to pull the wool over your eyes I just think this makes total sense. So, questions? Jeffrey.
Jeff Lyon, 2 questions. You never ask how much you're asking for. Second question, if you raise the $1 million, everything clicks the way you said it would do, how many workers would be living in these units in 5 years?
Okay, so I did mention the notes are gonna be offered starting at a minimum of $20,000. So you have to be willing to at least spend at least $20,000, and we'll go up. And I'm telling you, I'm committing significantly more than that, and there's other people in this room that are doing the same thing. So I can't really answer that as good as I'd like, because the way we built the models are, we go out to MLS, and these properties are on the market. So they're being listed, and we take what the rent is, and then we figure out what rent we can charge. So we know what the properties are being listed. There's probably, there's over 50 properties on the market right now. And so when we get the money, we will then go and visit those properties and say, okay, do they meet our qualifications? Some of them are beautiful. Some of them have been totally updated. They have the latest appliances, and they have nice countertops and everything. Some of them are the pits. We wouldn't do it. And so generally, if you have a 1-bedroom, it's generally, for workers, it's 2 people. If you have a 2-bedroom, it's generally 4 people. Now, we will buy homes. When we get fully up and running, we can buy a home in Bluffton. We cannot buy a home in Hilton Head. Doesn't happen. But we would be able to, say a general manager, maybe a general manager is not a good case. We couldn't afford to have Mario move here. But, there are cases where people that are making, $120,000, they can't live here. And so we might have a home in Bluffton that might make some sense. So I don't mean to be, I don't know. Go ahead, Ray. You got to get up.
The $20,000 is the minimum to make an investment.
Yes.
That gets a 3% return. If somebody has a check for $1,000, it's a tax-free donation, right? So what is the question?
It is tax-free donation. We need operating funds too. We have to have full-time people. So when we get this thing up and running, we will have a property management company that's running the properties. You can cut out further costs. There's profit even at 8 to 10%. You don't think they're doing this just out of the goodness of their heart. So once we get a certain number of properties, 50 properties, we'll hire somebody that does all the work. And so we'll cut more costs out. And believe me, I am really good at cutting costs.
I'm Donna Field. How are you going to choose the people that go into your apartments, and how are you going to be sure that they stay employed on the island?
Okay, good question. So we already have, if you go to the website, CCDC, we actually already have a application process, and there are people that are already applying for a job. So workforce housing, you have to be very careful about the housing rules. You can't discriminate. And so we have implemented what was utilized in the city of Pasadena. It's been through a court case, And so the requirements are, in order to rent a property in the first place, you have to work on the island. That's the first requirement. The second thing is anybody that invested, the thing I told you about, they would get priority on half of those. So that would be the second. You have to, each year, you have to verify your income. And if you have gone out of the guidelines, we would love to see people exceed the guidelines, because that means they're doing well and can do something else. They would then have a period of time to move out. We wouldn't go kick them out, obviously. But they have to qualify every year. And then if you bought the property, it has to be somebody that meets the guidelines too. And when they passed out of those, they'd have to sell the property. But that would be a wonderful problem to have. You got to get up. All of these people are going to look at this and, this is going down in history.
Just as a follow-up to your question, do they also have to requalify each year that they are working on the island?
Yes. We are only trying to solve the problem for workers on the island. If some investor or somebody comes in and wants to retire here, and they think this is a deal where we're not going to allow that. It just doesn't solve the problem. I'm sure someone will figure out a way to snooker us, but we're pretty reasonably smart for old people.
It's called experience. Bob Curry. You said you're going to encourage the people to buy the properties. What's going to prevent them from retiring or deciding to sell the properties? And then you've kind of made the problem a little bit worse then.
No, so we have a 99-year covenant. So the covenant is attached to the property. And so they can't sell the property, or they can't rent it, or they can't if they don't meet the covenant. And so they would be violating, it's a legal covenant. Okay. Now, it also has the added effect is if we don't qualify for complete tax exemption under the model, then we would qualify for the 4% homeowners tax under this approach through a legal convention, and that would reduce the property taxes on the ones where we can't get full exemption because of the covenant. The covenant reduces the marketability of that property. And because it reduces the marketability, the assessor has told us they assess it at a lower level. So you ought to ask some, Tony here knows more about affordable housing probably than anybody in the whole world. And Tony is actually working on the Beaufort County Jasper Authority, who also you have $5 million now, right?
Yes, Senator Davis has allocated $3 million for the Beaufort Jasper Housing Trust.
And so CCDC has an application in to the Beaufort Jasper to do the same thing. The cool thing about us, I'll repeat it again, is there's no development. We just go take advantage of the assets we already have.
Cost of development is between $285,000 to $325,000 per unit, within our geography. Well, sorry.
Are you done?
I'm done. Would it be appropriate to have Tony explain a little bit of what they're doing?
I'm
Sure.
getting tired.
Beaufort Jasper Housing Trust was created last November. It is 8 different municipalities that basically have earmarked funds for a 10-year period. Those funds are to be used to either renovate and or acquire new homes. And the acquiring new homes is by financing. So the point of the Beaufort Jasper Trust was to deal with those families or individuals less than 100% AMI with an actual concentration, or we're trying to get down to 60% of area median income. We had an RFP process in April. We had 7 respondees. 2 respondees realized they couldn't come up with the financial information in the time frame that we needed to analyze those deals. So then we had 5. We said no to 1, and we're currently looking at 4 transactions right now. The first deal is going to be a community up on Boundary Street in Beaufort.
Are those people, do they have to pre-qualify by being workers on it?
No. I mean, it's a regular apartment project that, we have 20-year affordability guidelines in ours, but because many of those lower income transactions come with HUD funds, the fair housing type of rules get, really rigorous. Whereas our financing, hopefully at some point we'll get monies from the state and obviously the local governments, but when you get up into receiving federal financing, there are, tighter rules. So it'd just be fair housing where you're going off of income limits, not place of employment.
Any other questions? Sandy? I gotta sit down.
Thank you. So, first of all, thank you for bringing this topic to the community because I think it's really important, and I personally do think it's the #1 threat to the community. But my question is, have you talked with Habitat to see if they could be helpful in terms of possibly doing some of the repair work that may be needed over time?
Good question. I can't answer that. I have not talked to Habitat, but I think we would certainly try to use them if we could. I mean, this thing is we're trying to do the best we can, and there are people that oppose CCDC. I can't imagine why. There's some people that oppose it because we've asked government for money. I can tell you that based on my career, I would never ask government to do anything. If I wanted government to do something, I'd figure out a way around it. But in this case, the town of Hilton Head has identified workforce housing as the #1 issue, and they've allocated $3 million to solving the problem. If we didn't ask for that, we would be doing the wrong thing. Those funds, the most successful answer in this particular space are public-private partnerships. You can go across and look at the articles. And the reason why is you need that low-cost money. You need grant money. Even paying 3% is difficult when there's no margins. So I don't know what, if somebody has a better idea of how to solve this problem, I can tell you I would devote my time to trying to implement that solution. If somebody does, speak up. Let me know. We're just trying to help. So let me tell you what's going to happen from me. If I'm going to follow up with you, if you don't want me to follow up with you, just send me an email and say I have no interest. There's no pressure to do this. I hope you do this because you want to solve the problem for the community. You want to help protect your property values. If you think this is all a bunch of crap, just let me know. There's just no reason to, but I will follow up with you. And if you do, I hope you decide to participate. But there'll be no pressure. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm trying to inform you of what a problem is and one way to solve the problem. There's other ways, We're just trying to do the best we can.
Great job.
I know Jerry because I saw his video.
Poor thing. Jared Denale. Just a quick question. Do you have a hotline or a link that we can answer, get a question answered? I know me. I'm going to think of something when I'm in the car. So if you have someplace I could follow up with you personally?
dcwetmore@icloud.com. If you look on, I promise you I will get your response within a day. The website, there is a website, CCD website, but once again, it was crafted by volunteers. Elaine Lesnack, we made the pitch, and Elaine said, I went to that website and it needs some help. So Elaine's going to help us, I hope. One more Long Cove person trying to solve the problem. Steve, you got a question?
Yeah, just a quick note. I think your slide said 25,000.
The slide did say that. We're in the process of doing the private placement memorandum. It's called a note. And we just decided last night to change it to 20. And the reason is, if you have a net worth of $1 million, 2% of that net worth is $20,000. It isn't going to amount to a hill of beans to you, to allocate $20,000 if you got $1 million net worth. So we dropped it to 20. Better marketability.
I guess I shouldn't have sat down. There's two people. There's two people that are affected by what you've described here, and we pretend we're someone hired by Long Cove, and they want to do something. A written prospectus on that simplicity to guide them through what's going to happen. Who do they call? Where do they go? How do they proceed? Having that written in some form will also help me as an investor to understand how the process is working. The other side of that is the investor. If I come to you with $25,000, you talked about a lot of things today, but I'm not sure I caught all of them, and maybe everybody else did, but having some data sheet that could show how the investment process unfolds that you described today would be very helpful.
You will have that. So if you decide to invest in the notes payable, you would get the notes payable agreement, which I told you just lists every bad thing that could ever happen. I mean, it could involve Carolina winning the Super Bowl. Everything's listed. And so the second thing is you will get the financial model that you would be investing in. So it will show you exactly what the properties, so what the number of properties that might be considered, what they are selling for, what the rents would be. It would then list the costs associated with running the properties. It would show the cash flow. It would then show what the assumptions are in refinancing over that period of time. Now, one thing you ought to recognize is this is a horrible time to do this. It's horrible. We have the highest interest rates we've had in 20 years. And property values are the highest they've been in 20 years, right? And so, probably ever. So why are we doing this now? I mean, I wish it. I mean, every time interest rates go up, I get this bad feeling in the pit of my stomach. And there's nothing we can do about it other than deal with it. But if we don't stop it, if we don't do something now and put a stake in the ground, it's going to keep going. And when interest rates go back down again, they're going to be buying these units again. And it's going to be increasing the traffic. It's going to be increasing the rents, and it's going to get worse. And so we think we need to put a stake in the ground and stop it. But you will get all the information you need. When we say this is an investment, I mean, debt instruments are investments. I mean, what you really ought to be concerned about is whether they can pay the interest. If you make a $100,000 investment and you don't get your $3,000 a year, that probably isn't going. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but if you don't get your $100,000 back, that's probably a problem. If it's 2% of your net worth, is it going to change anything? I don't think so. But you know what? I wouldn't like losing $100,000. Trust me, I didn't make a living trying to lose money, and I'm not intending to do it right now either. But you need to understand the risk, right? Yes, John, you gotta come up. I know this is hard for you.
So,
you gotta identify yourself.
Oh, John Ebert. Who cares? But anyway, government-private partnerships. I have a massive distrust in government, and if they're going to give you $3 million,
no, we didn't say there. Right now, we have a proposal to give $3,000. I mean, $600,000.
But whatever they give you,
Yes.
They always have strings attached. They always want to have some control over what you're doing with that money. And are those strings can they ultimately take over and take it away from you or take it away from your organization?
So the current reading, we've been through finance and administration. We got unanimous support for $600,000. We've been through the first reading. We got 5-1 vote. One council member was missing. There are no strings attached. The only possible string is that the money might come out as we buy the properties. So we'd have a closing scheduled for X number. We give them a 30-day notice, and they'd fund that would be the only string. They would have no ability to affect our operations. If they did, we wouldn't take the money. We have the same distrust of government that most people do. I don't want to get into that discussion. We could be here the rest of the day. Any other questions? So anytime, if you have any concerns whatsoever, I'm happy to meet with you individually. I'm passionate about getting this thing done. I think it's going to make a difference to our community. I think it's going to make a difference to Long Cove. I think it's going to make a difference to Hilton Head Island. And I want to get this problem solved. And I want you to participate, but I want you to participate because you think it's the right thing to do. And if you don't, just send me an email and say, I think you're full of crap, and we'll be friends still. Thank you very much.
Taking time out of your day. It's obviously a very important subject. I can tell you one great thing about this is I've been in this building 3 times this week, this past week. First for the Long Cove Fund reception, Long Cove stepping up, doing things for the island. Johnny's reception yesterday, same thing, Long Cove stepping up, and now, you know, Dave's one of the leaders in getting this thing going. You know, if we don't do it, it won't get there. So please, please take your time, think this through, and support it in whatever way you can. So look forward to seeing you tomorrow night at the meet and greet. Take care.